The park was alive with the sounds of children playing, but Officer Ben Carter noticed the little girl immediately. She couldn't have been older than 7, her small hands clutching a crumpled piece of paper. Her wide eyes and trembling steps told him something was wrong. "Officer," she said softly, her voice shaking, "can you help me?" Ben crouched down, offering a calm smile. "What's going on?" he asked. The girl handed him the paper, a crayon drawing. At first glance, it seemed like any child's artwork, but as he looked closer, his heart sank. It was a house with dark smoke rising from it. In front of the house stood a menacing figure with a wide, eerie grin. Scrawled in red crayon were the words, "Help us." Ben's grip tightened on the paper. "Who gave this to you?" he asked. "My sister," the girl whispered. "She's in trouble." What would you do if a simple drawing was a desperate cry for help? Before we reveal the truth behind this haunting message, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping stories. Let's find out how this one drawing turned into a race against time. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Maplewood Park, a lively yet peaceful place nestled in the heart of a suburban neighborhood. Children ran across the playground, their laughter mingling with the rustling of the wind through the trees. Parents sat on benches, chatting or scrolling through their phones. Amid this serene scene stood Officer Ben Carter, leaning against his patrol car, sipping a lukewarm coffee. Ben Carter, a 38-year-old cop with over a decade of experience, was a familiar face in the community. Known for his calm demeanor and sharp instincts, he had a reputation for always going the extra mile to protect those in need. Beneath his composed exterior, Ben carried the weight of personal tragedy, losing his younger sister in an unsolved case years ago. It was that loss that fueled his determination to ensure no cry for help went unheard. Nearby, in the quieter part of the park, a small girl named Lily sat alone on the grass, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. At just 7 years old, Lily had an innocence that stood in stark contrast to the worry etched on her face. Her family had fallen on hard times after her father passed away, leaving her mother to care for Lily and her older sister, Emily, who had taken on a protective role in their lives. Emily, at 15, was fiercely devoted to her younger sister. She often acted as both a sibling and a surrogate parent, ensuring Lily felt safe in a world that seemed increasingly uncertain. But Emily had secrets, ones she couldn't share with Lily, secrets that had led her to send Lily to the park that day with the crayon drawing. The park itself was a mix of vibrant life and subtle mystery. The playground was bustling with activity, but just beyond its edges lay a dense line of trees. The thicket created a natural barrier, shielding a forgotten area where few ventured. This juxtaposition of liveliness and unease made the park the perfect setting for the unfolding events. As Ben watched the park's activity, his attention was drawn to Lily, who approached him with hesitant steps. Her wide eyes, filled with a mix of fear and determination, immediately set him on edge. She held out the crumpled drawing without a word, her small hands trembling. "What's this, sweetheart?" Ben asked gently, kneeling to her level. "It's from my sister," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. "She said you'd know what to do." As Ben unfolded the paper, his heart sank. The drawing depicted a house with dark smoke curling out of it, a figure standing ominously at the doorway. Next to the image, written in bold red crayon, were the words, "Help us." In that moment, the stakes became painfully clear. Ben's instincts told him this wasn't just a child's game. Lily's fear, Emily's cryptic message, and the eerie simplicity of the drawing all pointed to a danger that couldn't be ignored. For Ben, this wasn't just another call of duty. It was a chance to act before it was too late, to prevent another tragedy from slipping through his fingers. The park, once a place of peace, had become the epicenter of an urgent mystery. And as Ben rose to his feet, gripping the drawing tightly, he knew that every second counted. Ben's mind raced as he studied the crayon drawing again, the crude lines of the house, the ominous figure, and the red words. "Help us," gnawed at him. Lily's trembling form beside him only solidified his growing urgency. He crouched down, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Lily, where is your sister now?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. "She said she had to stay at home," Lily whispered. "She told me to come find a policeman and give this to him." Ben's grip on the paper tightened. Home. The thought struck him like a hammer. "Where do you live, Lily?" She gave him an address on the outskirts of town, a part of the neighborhood he knew well. Quiet, isolated, and a place where things could go unnoticed. He immediately radioed for backup, his voice sharp and direct. "Possible hostage situation. Request immediate assistance at the following address." But something in Lily's wide, pleading eyes made him realize he couldn't wait for reinforcements. Time was slipping away, and whatever Emily was facing, she might not have much of it left. He made the call. He'd head there now, backup or not. As they drove, Lily began to open up. "Emily said not to come back until I gave you the drawing," she said, her voice shaking. She looked so scared, Officer Carter. I think something bad is happening." Ben fought to keep his emotions in check. Lily's fear mirrored something he hadn't felt in years, a deep sense of responsibility, the kind that reminded him of his failure to save his sister long ago. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was personal. The tension escalated as Ben arrived at the address. The house sat at the end of a narrow street, its windows dark, despite the late afternoon sun. A subtle unease hung in the air, and the overgrown bushes around the property gave it a foreboding presence. Lily clutched Ben's arm as he parked the car. "You stay here," he instructed, his voice firm but kind. "Lock the doors and don't open them for anyone but me." Lily nodded, her tear-filled eyes watching as Ben stepped out of the car. He approached the house cautiously, his hand resting on his holstered weapon. Every instinct screamed at him to be ready for the worst. Suddenly, a shadow flickered in one of the upstairs windows. Ben froze. Someone was in there, and they were watching him. He moved to the front door and knocked firmly. "This is Officer Carter with the Maplewood Police Department. Is anyone home?" No answer. Ben's chest tightened as he tried the doorknob. It was locked. Peering through the window, he saw faint movement inside, but it was too quick to make out. He circled to the back of the house, his steps careful and deliberate. The back door was slightly ajar, creaking as the wind pushed it open. He stepped inside. The air was thick and stale, the faint smell of something metallic making his stomach churn. The living room was eerily silent, toys scattered across the floor, and a lone backpack slumped near the couch. Everything seemed untouched, yet the sense of danger loomed like a shadow. A sudden noise upstairs, a faint thud, snapped his attention upward. Ben's pulse quickened as he ascended the creaky staircase, his flashlight cutting through the dim hallway. At the end of the corridor, a door stood slightly ajar, the faint hum of a television emanating from within. Ben's instincts kicked in, urging him to move cautiously. Pushing the door open, he found a bedroom, a girl's room. The bed was unmade, and the television played a static-filled cartoon, but the room was empty. Then he noticed it, a trail of crayon marks on the floor, leading out of the room and down the hall. The trail ended at a closed door, the attic. His heart raced as he heard muffled sounds from behind it. "Emily?" he called out, his voice firm. The noises stopped abruptly. Silence. Ben pushed the door open, revealing a narrow staircase leading up to the attic. The space was dimly lit by a single swaying bulb, and at the center of the room he saw her, Emily. She was tied to a chair, her face bruised, her eyes wide with terror. Before Ben could react, a low voice growled from the shadows. "You shouldn't have come here." The rising action had reached its peak. Ben realized he wasn't just fighting time, he was facing an adversary who wouldn't let Emily go without a fight. The stakes were higher than ever, and the outcome was anything but certain. Ben's heart raced as he stepped further into the attic, his flashlight trembling slightly in his grip. The dim light from the single bulb swayed, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Emily sat bound to the chair, her lips trembling, her eyes pleading silently for help. "Emily, it's okay," Ben said softly, his voice firm yet reassuring. "I'm here to get you out of this." From the shadows, a figure emerged, a man, tall and imposing, his face partially obscured by the dim light. He held a knife in one hand, its blade glinting ominously. "You cops just can't leave well enough alone, can you?" the man sneered. Ben's hand hovered over his holstered weapon. "Put the knife down," he commanded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. The man took a step closer to Emily, his movements calculated and menacing. "You don't understand," he growled. "She saw something she wasn't supposed to. This has nothing to do with you." Ben's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the story, the crayon drawing, the desperate plea for help, the fear in Lily's eyes. All of it led to this moment. "You're the one in the drawing," Ben said, his voice sharp. "You're the reason these girls are afraid." The man smirked but didn't respond. Instead, he reached out toward Emily, causing her to flinch. That was all Ben needed. In a swift motion, he drew his weapon, pointing it directly at the man. "Step away from her now," Ben barked, his voice echoing through the cramped attic. For a moment, the man hesitated, his confidence faltering. But then he lunged toward Emily, the knife raised high. The next moments happened in a blur. Ben's training took over as he fired a single shot, the sound deafening in the confined space. The man crumpled to the floor, the knife clattering from his hand. Emily let out a muffled cry, tears streaming down her face as Ben rushed to her side. He quickly cut through the ropes binding her wrists and ankles. "You're safe now," he said, his voice trembling slightly. As Emily clung to him, her sobs racking her small frame, Ben noticed something in the corner of the attic, a stack of photographs and documents. He grabbed them, his stomach churning, as he realized the depth of what this man had been involved in. "Emily, is there anyone else? Anyone else in danger?" Ben asked gently. Emily shook her head. "No, but he said no one would believe me." Ben's chest tightened. "I believe you," he said firmly. Downstairs, the sound of approaching sirens signaled the arrival of backup. As Ben guided Emily out of the house, Lily ran from the patrol car, throwing her arms around her sister. The sight of the two girls reunited brought a lump to Ben's throat, but even as relief began to wash over him, Ben knew this was only the beginning. The photos and documents hinted at a much larger operation, one that had targeted vulnerable families like Emily and Lily's. The man in the attic might have been stopped, but the fight for justice was far from over. Standing by the patrol car, Ben looked at the two sisters and made a silent vow. He would ensure that their courage in the face of fear wouldn't be in vain. Whatever it took, he would bring everyone responsible to justice. The tension in the air began to dissipate as the police backup arrived, their flashing lights illuminating the darkened street. Ben stood outside the house, watching as paramedics tended to Emily, wrapping her in a warm blanket. Lily clung tightly to her sister, her small frame trembling as the reality of the ordeal began to sink in. "Are you okay, Emily?" Ben asked, kneeling beside the sisters. Emily nodded weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You got here just in time," she said, her eyes filled with gratitude. The officers entering the house found the incriminating photographs and documents Ben had discovered in the attic. Each piece of evidence painted a grim picture of a larger operation targeting vulnerable children and families. The man in the attic, who was now in custody after being stabilized, turned out to be a key figure in the network. His capture opened the door to uncovering an entire web of criminal activity. Back at the station, Ben carefully documented everything that had unfolded. The crayon drawing, now preserved as evidence, became a symbol of the courage it took for two young girls to stand against overwhelming fear. For Emily and Lily, the ordeal left its mark, but it also brought them closer together. Emily began to open up about the events leading to her desperate plea for help. She shared how she had discovered the man's involvement in the crimes and his threats to silence her. Her decision to send Lily with the drawing was a calculated risk she took to protect her sister and expose the truth. Ben visited the girls' home a few days later, finding them in the care of a supportive community that had rallied around their family. Their mother, overwhelmed with gratitude, thanked him repeatedly for saving her daughters. "You believed them," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Not everyone would have acted as quickly as you did." Ben smiled faintly. "They're the real heroes. Emily's bravery and Lily's trust in the drawing were what saved the day." The small town, shaken by the revelations, came together to support the sisters and demand justice. Local authorities ramped up investigations into the larger network, determined to dismantle it entirely. For Ben, the experience was a stark reminder of why he joined the force: to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. He carried the crayon drawing with him for weeks after the incident, a reminder of the lives he'd helped save and the courage it took to speak out, even when it seemed impossible. As Emily and Lily began to rebuild their lives, their story inspired others in the community. Schools started programs to educate children about speaking up, and neighbors became more vigilant in looking out for one another. The small piece of paper that once symbolized fear had transformed into a beacon of hope. Through their bravery and Ben's swift action, Emily and Lily had turned their darkest moment into a story of resilience, justice, and new beginnings. The quiet hum of activity at the police station contrasted sharply with the chaos of the days prior. Officer Ben Carter sat at his desk, the crayon drawing carefully placed in a protective sleeve. It was a simple piece of paper, yet it held the weight of courage, fear, and the unwavering determination of two young sisters. The case had been a turning point, not just for Emily and Lily, but for the entire community. The evidence uncovered at the house had led to multiple arrests, unraveling a criminal network that had operated in the shadows for years. Emily's bravery and Lily's trust in her sister's plan had sparked a chain reaction, exposing truths that might have otherwise remained buried. For Ben, the experience left a profound mark. It reminded him of the fragile balance between fear and hope, of how even the smallest acts of courage could create ripples far beyond their origin. He carried the lessons of that day with him, vowing to listen more closely, act more decisively, and never dismiss a cry for help, no matter how small it might seem. Emily and Lily, though forever changed by the ordeal, began to heal. Their bond grew stronger, rooted in the knowledge that they had faced something far greater than themselves and emerged stronger for it. Emily found her voice in the weeks that followed, speaking at school assemblies and community meetings about the importance of speaking out and standing up for what's right. The community rallied around them, using their story as a catalyst for change. Programs were established to provide resources for vulnerable families, and law enforcement agencies worked to strengthen their ties with the neighborhoods they served. The once quiet suburb became a beacon of resilience and vigilance, ensuring that no one would be left to face such dangers alone again. As Ben prepared to leave the station one evening, he glanced once more at the crayon drawing on his desk. The image, which had once filled him with dread, now served as a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a chance for light. He folded the drawing carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket, knowing it would serve as a personal reminder of the day he witnessed true bravery. As he stepped out into the cool night air, he couldn't help but wonder what other stories might be waiting just around the corner, what other voices might need to be heard. Because if there was one lesson he had learned, it was this: sometimes the smallest hands carry the biggest truths, and it's up to those who listen to ensure those truths make all the difference. If this incredible story of bravery and determination moved you, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration today. What would you have done in Officer Ben's shoes? Or Emily's? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below. Let's start a conversation about courage, resilience, and the power of speaking up, no matter the odds. And if you want more stories that inspire, shock, or make you think, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss another gripping tale. Together, let's explore the stories that remind us of the strength of the human spirit. See you in the next video.